Chapter 1, Episode 5. They thought we were weak, then we showed them. ASF The Orion Rift pulsed like a living wound across the galactic map, its edges shimmering with distortions that mocked the laws of physics. In the vaulted chamber of the Architect Council, the alien delegates sat in tiers of obsidian stone, their voices a chorus of arrogance. They spoke of humans as if they were insects, resourceful perhaps, but fragile, destined to break under the rift's pressure. High Chancellor Vaith leaned forward, his crystalline carapace refracting the chamber's light. The humans have entered the rift. Their vessel, the Ashen Veil, is swallowed. They will not return. Their defiance ends here. A ripple of agreement spread through the chamber. The architects had ruled for millennia, weaving lies into the fabric of civilizations, convincing entire species that resistance was futile. Yet beneath their polished rhetoric, unease lingered. The rift was not a battlefield they controlled, it was a predator, and predators did not always obey their masters. Far from the Council's chamber, in the cavernous docks of Earth's orbital shipyards, engineers worked with a precision born of desperation. The Ashen Veil's last transmission had been received, fragmented, distorted, but unmistakably defiant. Mara's vow echoed across encrypted channels. We will burn their marrow. Dockmaster Rin barked orders over the comms, his voice clipped, devoid of theatrics. Load the antimatter cores, triple-check the containment seals. If one ruptures, we don't get a second chance. Beside him, Kale's sensor data scrolled across tactical displays. The rift's corridors bent reality into impossible geometries. Ships could vanish into folds of space, reappear shredded, or worse, fused into something unrecognizable. Yet Kale's analysis revealed patterns, faint but exploitable. They think the rift is chaos, Kale muttered, fingers dancing across the console, but its structure, a labyrinth. And every labyrinth has a center. In orbit above Titan, Admiral Saren convened the Human Defense Command. The room was stark, lined with steel and holographic projections of fleet deployments. Unlike the architect's chamber, there was no grandeur here, only the weight of survival. Saren's tone was calm, surgical. The architects believe the rift will consume us. They underestimate our capacity to adapt. We will not match their fleets ship for ship. We will cut their supply lines, exploit their arrogance, and strike where they believe us weakest. A junior officer raised a concern. Admiral, our logistics are stretched. Fuel reserves are at 40%. If we push deeper into the rift, we risk collapse. Saren's gaze was steady. Collapse is inevitable if we hesitate. The Ashen Veil is not lost, it has become something else. Our task is to ensure it reaches the core. Back in the rift, the Ashen Veil moved like a blade through liquid shadow. The ship was no longer steel and circuitry, it was fused with the will of its crew, sharpened by defiance. Mara stood at the command dais, her voice steady despite the madness pressing against the hull. Status. She demanded. Kale's reply was precise. Hull integrity holding. Sensors confirm architect structures ahead, massive, lattice-like, feeding on rift energy. They're not fortifications. They're conduits. Mara's lips tightened. Then we cut the conduits, starved them. The crew's oath burned in silence. They had seen the architects' lies unravel, had felt the rift's hunger claw at their sanity. Yet their unity was stronger than the void. Each corridor they carved was a declaration. Humanity would not be erased. In the Architect Council chamber, unease grew. Reports filtered in, fleets dispatched to monitor the rift were vanishing, not destroyed, but absorbed. Vaith's crystalline features fractured with irritation. Explain this anomaly, a subordinate stammered. The humans, their vessel, it is not behaving as expected, it is adapting. The chamber fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the architects faced something they had not planned for, a species that refused to break. On Earth, Dockmaster Rin watched the fleet's readiness report scroll across his console. Cargo haulers, retrofitted mining barges, even civilian transports, all pressed into service. Humanity's strength was not in grand warships, but in the ingenuity to turn anything into a weapon. Every bolt counts, Rin muttered. Every weld is a blade. Kale's voice crackled through the comms from within the rift. We've found the marrow. Architect conduits converge at a central nexus. If we sever it, their empire bleeds. Mara's command cut through the static. Then we strike. Not as prey, as predators. Admiral Saren's orders rippled across the fleet. Deploy in staggered waves. No formation the architects can predict. We will not give them symmetry. We will give them chaos. The officers nodded, their faces grim but resolute. Humanity had no illusions of invincibility. They had only the certainty that survival demanded audacity. In the rift's depths, the Ashen Veil surged forward, its blade-like hull slicing through architect conduits. Energy flared, structures buckled, and the void itself seemed to recoil. Mara's voice carried across the ship, calm and unyielding. They thought we were weak. They thought the rift would consume us. But we are the fire in the marrow, and we will burn them from within. The oath ignited once more, brighter than the stars, as the Ashen Veil plunged toward the core. End of Chapter 1, Episode 5. We need to write Chapter 2 of Episode 5 following the provided context. The story has Mara, Kale, Doc Master Rin, Admiral Saren. The previous chapter ended with the Ashen V ill plunging toward the core. Chapter 2 must continue the action, focusing on the grand clash between alien empires and human resourcefulness. Must be 800-100 words, crisp military dialogue, no CLAKs, high tension. Output only story text. Chapter 2. The Architect Nexus pulsed like a diseased heart, veins of black energy threading through the rift's twisted geometry. Mara's tactical display showed 3 converging enemy battlegroups, each one a swarm of crystalline warships that moved in perfect predatory unison. They had expected the strike. They had prepared. They're hurting us, Kale said from the navigation pit. His voice was flat, clinical. The conduit network is a trap. Every path we take funnels toward a kill zone. Mara studied the angles. The architects were arrogant, but not stupid. They had learned from the first engagement. Now they were using the rift's architecture against humanity, choke points, ambush corridors, overlapping fields of fire. Admiral Saren adjust wave deployment. 3rd and 4th groups break port and starboard. Use the debris fields as cover. We'll draw their fire and you flank. Saren's reply came with a half-second delay. Confirmed. Rin's retrofits are holding. The civilian hulls are running cold. Thermal masking is operational. They won't see us until we're on top of them. Dockmaster Rin, still on Earth, watched the data feeds with a cup of coolant that had gone cold hours ago. The numbers were brutal. 20% of the jury-rigged fleet had already suffered structural failures just from transiting the rift. They weren't built for this, but they were built for exactly this moment, when survival meant using every rivet, every weld, every scrap of ingenuity. Note to self, Rin muttered, next time reinforce the cargo bay couplings before sending them into a dimensional nightmare. The Ashen Veil's engines screamed as Mara executed a hard burn, angling the ship directly into the heart of the Architect formation. The bridge crew braced. The enemy opened fire, lances of white-hot energy that carved through space. Mara didn't dodge. She let the shots graze the forward shields, bleeding off their momentum, and then cut thrust. The ship tumbled, rotating on its axis, and the enemy's tracking systems lost lock. It was a trick from the old atmospheric fighters, a maneuver that required perfect timing and a crew that didn't flinch at the sight of their own hull glowing from near misses. They're recalibrating, Kale said. 3 seconds until they reacquire. 2 seconds is all we need, Mara replied. Fire starboard torpedoes. Pattern Delta, the ordnance launched not at the architects but at the conduit walls. The explosions ripped through the rift's substructure, creating a cascade of collapsing energy nodes. The enemy formation stuttered, their perfect symmetry broke. Saren's voice cut through the chatter. Flanking groups are in position, engaging now. The civilian ships appeared from behind the debris fields, their weapons, converted mining lasers, plasma cutters, even a few stolen architect cannons, opening fire on the distracted battle groups. The architects reacted, but slowly. Their doctrine was built for overwhelming force, not for a chaotic, multi-vector assault from ships that had no business being in a fight. On the bridge of the Resolute, a converted freighter, Lieutenant Commander Voss watched his targeting computer lock onto an architect cruiser. "This is insane," he said to no one in particular. "That's the point," his gunner replied and fired. The mining laser punched through the cruiser's light armor, venting atmosphere. The ship listed, its crystalline structure cracking. It wasn't destroyed, but it was wounded. And in the rift, a wounded enemy was a target. Mara saw the opportunity. "Kale, plot a course through the gap. We're going deeper. That puts us in the secondary nexus. The architects will have a garrison there." "They'll have a garrison there," Mara said, pointing to the tactical map. "But they won't expect us to come from the gravity well. Use the rift's own distortion to mask our approach." Kale's hands moved across the console. "It'll stress the hull to breaking point. Rin's welds will hold, but the crew knows the stakes. Do it." The Ashen Veil dove, skimming the event horizon of a minor gravitational anomaly. The ship groaned, metal screaming against forces that should have torn it apart. Mara kept her hands steady on the controls, her eyes fixed on the target. The architect garrison saw them too late. The veil came out of the distortion like a blade from a sheath, all guns firing at point-blank range. The secondary nexus shattered, its energy conduits rupturing in a cascade of light. From the bridge of his flagship, High Eternal Vithrax watched the human ship's audacity with something that might have been respect. Then he gave the order to activate the final failsafe. The rift began to close. The rift began to close. Alarms on the Ashen Veil's bridge screamed so loud Mara's teeth ached, overriding even the aftershock rattles from the secondary nexus blast. The edges of the rift folded in like wet synth paper, swallowing the jagged light of the exploding energy conduits whole, leaving only the inky dark of collapsing spacetime in its wake. Hull stress gauges pegged into the red before Kale even finished swearing. Closure rate is 12% per second, he yelled, fingers flying across his console so fast they blurred. If we don't punch through the aperture in 87 seconds, the shear'll peel the hull off the frame like a fruit skin. Vthrex didn't just lock us in, he's caving the whole tunnel in on top of us. Mara didn't take her hands off the control yoke. The tactical map glowed red around the edges, marking the rift's shrinking exit, and the mass of Architect capital ships holding position at the far mouth, their batteries already charging to pick off the veil the second it popped out. She decounted on Vthrex being arrogant enough to overcommit, not this cautious. Plot a course for the debris field. We're not punching through, we're riding the collapse. Kale's head snapped up. You want to surf a space-time collapse. The rift is pulling every loose object in the sector into the closing aperture, Mara said, tapping the cluster of wreckage on the map. The disarmed cruiser they devented earlier, the shredded remains of the Nexus station, half a dozen stray ore barges the architects had left floating as bait. That debris is going to accelerate to relativistic speeds, right as it hits the lead cruiser in their line. We tuck behind it, use the shockwave to mask our approach, and fire the main railgun point-blank into their command tower before they even know we're there. On the bridge of the Eternal Resolve, High Eternal Vthrex watched the human vessel's trajectory shift on his tactical display with the same mild curiosity he'd have watching a pest scuttle across a floor. His sub-commander Thalon preened at his side, already drafting the victory announcement for the High Council. The failsafe is functioning perfectly, High Eternal. The raider will be crushed within the minute. No need to waste ammunition on a doomed target. Vthrex didn't answer. He'd watched the humans disable a cruiser with a mining laser, then dive straight through a gravity well to blow a fortified Nexus garrison. They didn't fight like prey. His finger hovered over the comms to order the forward batteries to target the debris field, but it was too late. Down in engineering, Rin slammed a mag press into a ruptured hull plate, sparks showering her cracked face mask. The bulkhead to the lower decks had given way 10 seconds earlier, trapping 2 of her techs under twisted strut, and the coolant line running parallel to her work zone was leaking vapor so cold it was frosting the edges of her gloves. Her comms crackled, Mara's voice cutting through the static. Rin, we need all non-essential power rerouted to forward shields and the main railgun. How long until you can patch the port side thrusters? 3 minutes if the coolant doesn't blow first, Rin yelled back, twisting the mag press tighter to seal the breach. Tell Kale not to juke the second we clear the debris field. If he does, the shear'll snap the spinal column like a twig. She didn't wait for a response. The rift's closure was warping the local gravity, making her boots feel like they were stuck in wet cement, but she didn't slow down. She grabbed the welding torch off the workbench, searing the seal around the hull plate shut before the stress could pop it back open. Jax, reroute the auxiliary power, don't check the load limits. If the railgun doesn't fire when we need it to, none of us are going to live to care about blown circuits. Back on the bridge, Kale's console lit up with proximity alerts. Debris field is accelerating to 0.4 lights. Impact with the lead Architect cruiser in 10 seconds. Vale is in position behind the largest wreckage fragment. Hold course, Mara said, her voice steady even as the hull groaned so loud the overhead lights flickered. Fire the main railgun on my mark. The railgun's charge glowed bright blue along the Vale's spine. The debris field hit the lead Architect cruiser first, turning the 2-kilometer-long warship into a cloud of shredded metal and venting atmosphere before its own batteries could fire a single shot. The shockwave ripped through the rest of the line, taking out 2 more cruisers and blinding the rest of the fleet's sensors for 3 full seconds. The Veil burst out of the collapsing rift right in the middle of the blinded fleet, the railgun firing point-blank into the command tower of the Eternal Resolve. Vthrex's viewport cracked down the middle from the impact, showering his command deck in glass dust. His counselors scrambled for cover, but he didn't move, his eyes fixed on the tactical display where the ashen veil was already vanishing into the dark, the rift snapping shut behind it with a thunderclap that rattled the Resolve's hull to its keel. He'd activated the failsafe to erase the human raider from existence. Instead, they'd just taken out a third of his fleet and put a railgun round through his command post. For the first time in 3 centuries of conquest, Vthrex felt something close to fear. Chapter 4, The Anvil and the Hammer. 3 hours after the rift collapsed, Fleet Command Nexus, a hollowed-out asteroid bristling with comm arrays, received the deep space tap from the Ashen Veil. The feed was fragmented, laced with static from the Architect jamming net, but the data packet was unmistakable, a kill count, a vector plot, and a single terse message from Captain Mara Keen. Architect fleet scattered, high-value command vessel damaged, initiating Phase 2. Expect retaliation within 72 hours, Keen out. In the Nexus war room, Commodore Elias Torrens stared at the holographic map. The Veil had punched a hole through the Architect line, shredded 3 cruisers, and bloodied the Eternal Resolve. But the cost was visible in the casualty feed trickling in from the long-range drones. 2 human frigate squadrons had been caught in the debris wash, their hulls battered, life support flickering. 16 dead, 23 wounded. They're not retreating, Torrin said, his voice flat. He zoomed in on the architect formation, now reforming 50 light seconds from the rift exit. They're regrouping. Vithrax is smart enough to know a single raider can't hold a system. He'll reinforce. And he'll come back with something worse. Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka, logistics chief, mid-40s, gray streaking her black hair, pulled up a projection of the human fleet's remaining assets. We have 3 functional cruisers, 12 frigates in the Vale. They have 200 warships still operational, plus whatever reserves Vithrax can pull from their core worlds. We can't outfight them. Then we don't fight, Torrin said. We bait. He pointed to a cluster of markers on the map, 3 civilian mining stations in the outer belt, each with a dry dock and enough refined metal to build a battle group. Vithrax will hit these first. He needs supplies. He needs a base. We give him one of them, sacrifice a station. Tanaka's jaw tightened. That's 3,000 civilians, Commodore. Evacuate them now. Flood the station with decoy signals, fake fleet movements, false maintenance logs, make it look like we're staging a counterattack from there. He'll commit his reserves to crush it, and when his main force is tangled up in the asteroid field, we hit his supply lines. Tanaka stared at the map. The Vale is the only ship fast enough to pull that off. And she just took a beating. She's a dock worker's daughter's ship, Torrin said, a rare hint of grim humor in his voice. Dock workers know how to patch things up. 2 decks below the war room in the Nexus's main engineering bay, Chief Petty Officer Riza Haddad wiped coolant from his forehead and stared at the damage report on his datapad. The Vale had limped into the bay 2 hours ago, its hull scarred, the railgun's capacitor bank cracked from the strain of the point-blank shot. The rift drive was running hot, dangerously hot, the emitter coils showing microfractures. She needs a full refit, Haddad muttered to his team. 14 days, minimum. A young technician, barely 20, fresh from the deep mining colonies, pointed at the clock on the wall. We've got 48 hours before the architect probe drones find this rock. Haddad looked at the Vale's open reactor hatch. The core was still glowing, a faint blue pulse like a heartbeat. Then we get creative, strip the buffer capacitors from the frigate Resolute, reroute the cooling lines through the emergency discharge vents, and tell Keen I need her chief engineer on the line. We're going to push this bird past the red line. The tech's eyes widened. That'll burn out the coils in 3 jumps. 3 jumps is all we need, Haddad said. Get to work. Aboard the Eternal Resolve, Vithrax stood before his remaining fleet commanders in the reconstructed command deck. The crack in the viewport had been welded over with a crude plate of battle steel, a permanent scar, a reminder of the human's insolence. The raider is a splinter, Vithrax said, his voice cold, measured. It stings, but it does not kill. The human fleet is hiding. They believe their trick with the debris field was a victory. They will grow bold. He gestured to the tactical display, now showing the outer belt stations. We will crush their boldness. Fleet Commander Zarvoth, take the 2nd Assault Squadron to Station Aurelius. Overwhelm it, hold it. Let the humans see what happens when they provoke us. Zarvoth, a broader, younger architect with a scarred carapace, stepped forward. And the raider, Lord Vithrax. The raider will come to defend their station, Vithrax said. And when it does, you will have 20 cruisers waiting, not to capture, to annihilate, leave nothing but atoms. The counselors murmured approval, but Vithrax's gaze drifted to the welded crack in the viewport. He had felt the railgun's shockwave. He had seen the Vale vanish before his failsafe could trigger. These humans were not a broken species. They were a cornered one, and cornered things fought hardest. He just had to make sure they were also outnumbered, outgunned, and out of options. The clock was ticking. The 2nd Assault Squadron's jump drives cooled in unison. 20 heavy architect cruisers materializing 12,000 kilometers sunward of Station Aurelius, their matte black hulls glinting dully against the void. Fleet Commander Zarvoth stood on the bridge of his flagship Iron Resolve, his scarred chitinous carapace itching under the weight of his command harness. The main tactical display scrolled Station Aurelius status. 4 aging orbital defense guns cold, no active power signatures from the hangar bays, only faint unencrypted comms chatter spooling out from the dock systems. Engineering teams reporting hull fractures, life support fluctuations, the kind of noise a station that taken a recent beating would emit. Sensors confirm no raider signature within 1.2 million clicks, his sensor officer reported, voice flat. They're either hiding behind the 3rd moon or bugged out to the core systems. Zarvoth's lower mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Lord Vithrax's intel had held. The humans would come for the station. He toggled the fleet-wide comms, voice low enough that only the bridge crew could hear. Hold all non-essential signatures. No weapons power-up, no comms bursts, no jump drive spooling. We wait for the raider. The moment it crosses the 5,000-kilometer threshold, lock plasma batteries and fire for annihilation. No survivors, no escape pods, no recoverable wreckage. Is that clear? the bridge crew murmured affirmation. Zarvoth's gaze drifted to the cold spot on the tactical display where the human raider had disabled the veil 3 days prior. He reviewed the railgun impact footage 12 times since. The humans hadn't gotten lucky. They'd timed the shot to hit the exact junction between the veil's forward armor and its jump drive housing, a weakness no architect-tactician had ever bothered to map. He tapped the console, pulling up the fleet's ammunition loadout, 2,400 plasma warheads, enough to turn the raider to ash before it could return fire. Vithrax wanted a show of force for the council, but Zarvoth wanted the raider gone. It was the only human asset that proven it could hurt them. 12,000 clicks away, in Aurelius Dock Bay 7, Javi Rurk leaned against the hull of a retrofitted Corvette hanging in the docking clamp, the arc welder in his hand still warm from the last patch he'd laid on its port engine housing. His comms earpiece crackled to life 30 seconds before the alien cruisers dropped out of jump, the sensor warning spooling through before the station bridge had time to broadcast it. He tapped his earpiece, keying the channel to the 17 engineering teams spread across the station's outer hull. All external teams, brace for comms jamming in 60 seconds. They'll cut our long-range feeds the second they park. Get your emergency beacons activated now, no waiting. A 19-year-old junior engineer named Tia popped her head out of the Corvette's open cargo hatch, her face smudged with hydraulic grease. Javi, the decoy's ready. We loaded the last of the shaped charges into the missile tubes this morning. You think they'll bite? Javi glanced at the photo of his 7-year-old daughter taped to the inside of his welding gauntlet, the one he'd taken yesterday when he put her on the civilian transport bound for the Proxima Corps. They're arrogant, they think we're crippled. They'll sit there and wait for the raider to come save us, just like Vithrax wants. He tapped the gauntlet, the photo peeking out. We just gotta make sure they're still sitting there when Viper's done with M. 10 minutes later, the comms jamming hit exactly on schedule, static fizzing over all of Aurelius' external channels. Zarvoth watched the station's emissions drop to almost nothing, just the faint hum of life support in the idle power of the dock systems. His tactical officer leaned forward, pointing at a faint, blipped signature emerging from behind the third moon, 8,000 kilometers out. Contact, the officer said, voice tight. Human raider matching the Veil's signature profile. It's moving toward the station at 0.2 lightspeed. No weapons powered up, no defensive shields raised. Zarvoth's mandibles clicked sharper this time. Perfect. He toggled the bridge comms, his voice low. All batteries, target the raider's forward jump drive and command deck, fire on my mark. He leaned forward, finger hovering over the fire command, waiting for the raider to cross the 5,000-kilometer threshold. He didn't notice the faint, unregistered energy signatures spooling up from the asteroid belt between the cruisers and the station, masked by the moon's radiation shadow. He didn't see the 12 modified mining drones drift out of the station's hidden aft cargo bay, their engines cold, matching the station's idle power signature. Back in Aurelius' Tactical Command Center, Commander Alara Reyes watched the sensor feed, her jaw tight. She saw Zarvoth's cruisers hold position, saw the raider's signature move slow, deliberate, toward the station exactly as they'd planned. She tapped her comms, keying the channel to the raider's commander, Kale. Viper, this is Aurelius Command. You're clear to hold position at 7,500 clicks. Do not cross the threshold until the mining drones are in range. Zarvoth's got his finger on the trigger. He's not gonna wait long. She turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Mara, who was tracking the drone trajectories. ETA on drone impact. 3 minutes, Commander, Mara said, voice steady. They'll be within 2,000 clicks of the lead cruiser before Zarvoth's sensors pick them up. The shaped charges are set to penetrate cruiser armor, take out the bridge and weapons systems first. Reyes nodded, glancing at the tactical display showing the Eternal Resolve's last known position, 1.5 light hours out. Vithrax would jump the main fleet in as soon as the raider was destroyed to mop up. They just had to make sure Zarvoth's cruisers were too damaged to fight when he did. Zarvoth's voice blared over an open, unjammed frequency for half a second before the humans' electronic warfare suite cut it off. Human vessels, surrender the station immediately or we will bombard it into dust in 60 seconds. Reyes smirked, tapping the comms to respond, her voice calm, ice cold. Come and get it, Zarvoth, we've been waiting for you. Chapter 6, Episode 5, they thought we were weak, then we showed them. ASF, the council chamber of the Zarvoth Dominion, was a cathedral of arrogance, vaulted ceilings lined with banners of conquered worlds, holographic projections of fleets arrayed like jewels in the void. High Lord Zarvoth stood at the center, his voice resonant, his claws tapping against the obsidian table. They stall, they taunt. Humans believe their crude drones can wound us. They mistake patience for weakness. His eyes swept across the gathered commanders, each armored in ceremonial plating, each silent under the weight of his fury. We will erase their station, then their fleet. Vithrax will arrive to claim the wreckage, but it will be our victory. A murmur of assent rippled through the chamber, but beneath it lay unease. The humans had already proven unpredictable. Their engineers had turned mining equipment into weapons, their dock workers into saboteurs. What empire had ever faced such improvisation? On Aurelia's station, Commander Alara Reyes leaned over the tactical display. The drone swarm was closing in, their trajectories masked by debris fields. Lieutenant Mara's voice cut through the tension. 2 minutes until impact. Zarvoth's cruisers are holding formation, no deviation. Reyes nodded. Good, that means he still thinks we're bluffing. She tapped her comms. Kale, hold your line. If they break formation, you pivot to Vector 7. Do not engage until I give the word. Kale's reply came sharp, clipped. Understood. Viper holding. Around them, the station's crew moved with unnerving calm. Dock workers rerouted power from life support redundancies to shield generators. Engineers stripped down cargo haulers, welding improvised armor plates to their hulls. Every hand was steady, every motion deliberate. They had no illusions. This was survival, not glory. The Zarvoth fleet sensors finally caught the drones. A ripple of alarms echoed across their cruisers. On the flagship, a tactical officer turned to Zarvoth. Lord, unidentified contacts approaching at high velocity. Small, irregular signatures, likely debris. Zarvoth sneered. Debris does not move with intent. Destroy them. The cruisers opened fire, plasma bursts streaking across the void. But the drones were too small, too fast, their trajectories weaving through the barrage. A heartbeat later, the first shaped charge detonated against a cruiser's hull. The explosion was surgical, armor peeled back, the bridge compartment gutted. The vessel drifted, weapons silenced. Another drone struck, then another. Within seconds, 2 cruisers were crippled, their formations collapsing. Reyes exhaled, her voice steady. Impact confirmed. Mara status. 2 cruisers disabled, 3rd sustaining heavy damage. Zarvoth's flagship still intact. Reyes keyed the comms. Kale now, Vector 7, cut across their flank. The Raider Viper surged forward, engines burning hot. Its weapons locked onto the wounded cruiser, unleashing a barrage that tore through exposed systems. The Zarvoth formation fractured, their disciplined lines unraveling into chaos. In the Dominion Council chamber, the holographic feed flickered. Commanders shifted uneasily as they watched Zarvoth's fleet falter. One dared to speak. High Lord, the humans, they anticipated our response. Their drones bypassed our defenses. This is not chance. Zarvoth's claws dug into the table. Silence, they are vermin, nothing more. Vithrax will arrive with the eternal resolve and the humans will be crushed. But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at the chamber. The humans had shown a terrifying calm, a willingness to weaponize anything at hand. They did not fight like prey, they fought like predators disguised in rags. On Aurelia's station, Reyes watched the tactical display shift. The crippled cruisers drifted, their signals fading. Mara's voice was low, almost reverent. They're breaking, Commander. Zarvoth's formation is collapsing. Reyes shook her head. Not yet. He'll hold until Vithrax arrives. That's when the real fight begins. She turned to her crew, her voice carrying across the command deck. Listen carefully. We've bloodied them, but this is only the opening act. Vithrax will bring the eternal resolve, and when he does, we'll show them what human resolve really means. Every system, every drone, every improvised weapon, we use it. No hesitation. The crew answered with a single word, unified and steady. Understood. In the void, Zarvoth's flagship loomed, its weapons charging. He opened a channel, his voice dripping with fury. Humans, you think yourselves clever. You wound us with toys, but when the eternal resolve arrives, your station will burn and your fleet will scatter. Reyes keyed her comms, her tone calm, unyielding. Zarvoth, you've already lost more than you expected, and when Vithrax arrives, he'll find you crippled, bleeding, and alone. We don't need toys, we have something you'll never understand. Zarvoth snarled. And what is that? Reyes leaned closer to the mic, her words sharp as steel. Adaptation. The drones continued their assault, swarming the remaining cruisers. Kale's raider darted through the chaos, striking exposed systems with precision. The Zarvoth fleet, once a wall of arrogance, was now a fractured line of burning wrecks, but Reyes knew this was only the beginning. The eternal resolve was coming, and when it did, humanity would not cower, they would rise. The chapter closed with the station's crew bracing for the next wave, their eyes fixed on the void, their hands steady on controls. The humans had shown their teeth, the Empire had underestimated them. And now the war was about to escalate. The bulkhead doors hissed shut behind Chief Engineer Mara Ortiz as she slipped into the lower lattice of the docking ring, the hiss of recycled air a constant reminder that the station was still alive. Above her, the main concourse stretched like a steel canyon, littered with the scorched husks of Zarvoth's cruisers. Sparks drifted from ruptured power conduits, painting intermittent constellations across the gloom. Mara's gloves were slick with hydraulic fluid. She wiped them on her coveralls and checked the readout on her wrist pad. 73% hull integrity, 12% reserve power, auxiliary thrusters online. A low thrum vibrated through the deck plates, the distant growl of the Eternal Resolve's approach. Its mass was a silhouette against the starfield, a jagged lance of dark alloy flanked by a swarm of striker frigates. The alien dreadnought's weapons glowed, capacitors charging to a frequency that made the very air hum. Ortiz, status on the forward mag rail. Commander Reyes' voice crackled over the comm, steady despite the urgency. Mara glanced at the schematic hovering in her visor. Rail S at 89% capacity. We can push a salvo of 3 kilotons before the coolant loops start to cavitate. If we divert power from the secondary life support loops, we can squeeze out a fourth shot, but we'll lose O2 generation for 47 minutes. Do it. We need every joule we can get. Reyes' tone didn't waver, but the underlying calculation was clear. Sacrifice comfort for firepower. Mara keyed the reroute. A cascade of alerts flooded her HUD, life support pressure dropping, CO2 scrubbers throttling back. She swallowed the sting of recycled air and focused on the rail's magnetic coils, feeling the pulse of energy build like a held breath. Above the docking ring, the tactical plot flickered on the main holo table. Lieutenant Jax Wren, a former dockworker turned weapons officer, traced the trajectories of incoming striker frigates with a stylus. His fingers moved fast, eyes flicking between the hologram and the raw sensor feeds streaming from the station's external arrays. 3 frigates flanking the dreadnought's port side, Vector 012 Delta, Jax reported, voice clipped. They're trying to box us in for a broadside. If we let them get within 500 clicks, their plasma lances will shred the outer ring. Reyes leaned forward, elbows on the console. What's our window? Jax glanced at the timer blinking in the corner of his display. 42 seconds until they reach optimal engagement range. After that, their point defense nets will start to saturate our countermeasures. Reyes turned to Ortiz. Can we lock the mag rail on the lead frigate's reactor core? Mara's eyes narrowed as she ran a quick simulation. If we fire a kinetic slug at 0.3 C, we'll punch through the shielding and hit the reactor. The resulting secondary detonation should take out the other 2 frigates in the blast radius. Probability of success, 68% with current power allocation. Take it. Reyes' decision was immediate, the kind that had earned her the nickname Iron Willow among the crew, flexible under pressure, unbreakable in resolve. Mara engaged the firing sequence. The mag rail hummed, a low vibration that traveled up through the deck plates into her bones. A luminous lance of accelerated matter screamed forward, a silver spear cutting through the void. The impact flared, a bloom of incandescent plasma as the frigate's reactor ruptured, shockwaves rippling outward and catching its siblings in a cascading fireball. On the holo table, the 3 red icons blinked out, replaced by expanding spheres of debris. A cheer rose from the crew, raw and unfiltered, but Reyes silenced it with a raised hand. Good work, keep the pressure on. She switched to the fleet channel. All combat wings shift to intercept vector, target the dreadnought's flank. We want to force them to turn broadside, expose their aft thrusters. A chorus of acknowledgments crackled back. Pilots in their sleek interceptors, modified freighters refitted with scavenged alien thrusters, peeled away from the station's launch bays. Their engines sang a higher pitch as they burned fuel harvested from the station's own waste reclamation tanks, a testament to the ingenuity of the dockworkers who had turned scrap into survival. Below deck, Ortiz felt the station shudder as the enemy's return fire began. A salvo of plasma bolts lanced toward the docking ring, striking the outer hull with a sound like thunder underwater. Ablative panels flared, absorbing the brunt, but the heat seeped through, raising the temperature in the maintenance corridors by 12 degrees Celsius. Damage control report, Reyes barked. Teams of engineers and dockworkers flooded the passages, sealing breaches with polymer foam, rerouting power through jury-rigged conduits. Chief Ortiz moved with them, her hands slick with sealant, her mind already calculating the next power shift. She called out to a group of welders near the auxiliary generator. Divert 10 megawatts to the forward shields. We need to hold the line long enough for the interceptors to get in range. The welder nodded, torch igniting, and began splicing cables with practiced speed. Somewhere deeper in the station, a junior technician named Lyra Voss was calibrating the station's nascent AI, an emergent construct cobbled together from the wrecked nav cores of Zarvoth's destroyers. Its voice, a neutral timbre, whispered through the comms. AI Vox online. Predictive threat assessment. Enemy dreadnought will attempt a mega pulse cannon discharge in approximately 3 minutes 20 seconds. Recommend preemptive countermeasure deployment. Reyes glanced at the timer again. Vox, initiate the countermeasure. Ortiz readied the rail for a second shot. Mara's fingers danced over the controls. The mag rail's capacitors whined, sucking energy from the station's grid. She diverted additional power from the non-essential habitation modules, feeling the subtle dip in ambient temperature as life support throttled down further. The crew's breath fogged in the chill, but no one complained. The stakes were too high. Outside, the interceptors closed in. Their pilots, men and women who had spent their lives loading cargo pallets and tightening bolts, now flew with the precision of fighter aces. They launched salvos of kinetic penetrators aimed at the dreadnought's engine nozzles, each strike a tiny needle seeking to jam the massive thrusters. The alien dreadnought shuddered as its aft thrusters sputtered, the alien engineer's overconfidence exposed. A guttural alarm sounded within its command chamber, a deep, resonant tone that translated roughly to system failure. On the holotable, the enemy's icon flickered, its shield strength dropping by 17%. Reyes seized the moment. Fire the rail, the second slug launched, a heavier round infused with a destabilizing alloy scavenged from a captured Zarvoth shield generator. It slammed into the dreadnought's flank, piercing the layered armor and finding the reactor's containment field. A brilliant cascade of energy erupted, the alien power core destabilizing in a controlled implosion that sent a shockwave rippling through the ship's spine. The dreadnought lurched, its forward momentum halted. Lights along its hull flickered, then went dark in sections as emergency systems struggled to compensate. The alien fleet's formation wavered, the striker frigates pulling back to protect their wounded flagship. On the station, the crew felt the reverberation through the deck, a low, resonant thud that spoke of a blow landed. Ortiz allowed herself a brief, tight smile before turning back to the consoles. Power levels at 41%, shields holding at 62%. We've bought ourselves time, but they'll regroup. Jax leaned in, his voice low. They'll send a second wave, probably with heavier armaments. We need to turn this station into a trap. Reyes stared at the void where the eternal resolve hung, wounded but still formidable. She thought of the council chambers aboard the alien flagship, where arrogant admirals debated the insignificance of humans, where they'd dismissed the station as a negligible outpost. She remembered the faces of the dockworkers who had spent sleepless nights welding patches onto hulls, the engineers who had turned scrap metal into weapons, the tactical officers who had read enemy patterns like poetry. We'll make them regret ever calling us weak, she said, voice quiet but edged with steel. Ortiz, keep the rail hot. Jax, prep the mines. Lyra, have Vox start feeding false telemetry, make them think we're falling back, then hit them when they commit. The crew moved as one, a symphony of clanging tools, humming consoles, and whispered orders. The station, once a humble outpost, had become a forge of defiance. In the distance, the alien dreadnought's wounded hull glimmered faintly, a dying star amidst the chaos, a reminder that even empires could blade. Outside, the void waited, holding its breath for the next move. And inside the dimly lit corridors of the station, humanity's resolve hardened not with bravado, but with the quiet certainty of those who had learned to turn scarcity into strength, fear into focus, and desperation into victory. Chapter 8, The Council's Miscalculation. The Alien Council Chamber was a cathedral of arrogance. Vast pillars of obsidian alloy rose into the vaulted ceiling, each etched with the victories of their empire. Admirals and strategists sat in tiered rows, their voices sharp, dismissive, certain. They are fractured, one declared, mandibles clicking in disdain. Their fleets are scattered, their stations underarmed. The humans cling to debris and call it defense. Another, draped in ceremonial armor, leaned forward. The eternal resolve was damaged, yes, but it will return with reinforcements. The humans will be crushed beneath the second wave. Their defiance is a statistical anomaly, nothing more. The chamber hummed with agreement. Charts flickered across hollow screens, depicting human outposts as fragile sparks against the Empire's vast constellation of warships. Yet beneath the veneer of certainty, a single voice cut through. They adapt, said strategist Vaynar, his tone measured. They turn scarcity into weapons. Every delay we grant them is a risk. If they have mined the station, if they have altered telemetry, our second wave may not find the easy victory you predict. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then erupted in laughter. Humans, clever, scoffed Admiral Core. They are primitives. Their ingenuity is desperation disguised as strategy. We will erase them, but Vaynar's compound eyes lingered on the projections, noting the irregularities in human defense patterns. He saw not desperation, but design. On the station, Reyes stood at the tactical console, her jaw set. The crew's movements were precise, deliberate. Dockworkers hauled crates of improvised mines into launch tubes. Engineers rerouted power from life support redundancies into the railgun capacitors. Every hand was steady, every order carried weight. Telemetry spoofing is live, Lyra reported. They'll see us pulling back, drifting, vulnerable. Good, Reyes said. Let them believe it. Ortiz, status on the rail. Coils are hot. We can fire 3 full charges before the system melts. 3 will be enough. Jax entered, grease streaked across his uniform. Mines are armed, patterns set to detonate on proximity. They'll think it's debris until it's too late, Reyes nodded. Then we wait. The station's corridors thrummed with tension. Dockworkers whispered to one another, not of fear, but of resolve. They had patched hulls with their bare hands, welded armor from scrap, and now they stood ready to see if their work would hold against the Empire's wrath. The alien fleet emerged from the void like a tide of steel. Sleek cruisers flanked the Eternal Resolve, its wounded hull now reinforced with fresh plating. Behind them, carriers unfolded, disgorging swarms of interceptors. Second wave has arrived, Vox announced. Telemetry shows they're advancing in wedge formation. Rays studied the display. They think we're retreating, hold position, do not fire until they commit. The alien admiral aboard the Eternal Resolve sneered as human signals flickered across his screen. Pathetic, they drift like wreckage, forward batteries prepare to fire. Strategist Vaynar, standing at his side, frowned. Their drift is too uniform, it is not collapse, it is bait. But the admiral dismissed him with a wave. You see ghosts in shadows, fire. The first barrage lit the void, plasma lances streaking toward the station. Shields flared, buckled, but held. Rays gave the order. Release mines. The debris field around the station shimmered, fragments of metal and broken hull plating drifting outward. Hidden among them, the mines activated, their signatures masked. The alien interceptors surged forward, confident, until proximity triggers ignited. Explosions rippled across the formation. Cruisers staggered, their hulls torn open. Interceptors vanished in blossoms of fire. Railgun fire 1, Rays commanded. Ortiz slammed the trigger. The railgun roared, a spear of tungsten accelerated to impossible velocity. It tore through the Eternal Resolve's forward plating, punching a hole clean through its command deck. Alien voices screamed across comms. The admiral's arrogance dissolved into panic. Counterfire, regroup, but the humans were already moving. Jack's rerouted power, feeding the railgun for a second shot. Lyra's false telemetry scrambled alien targeting systems, making the station appear to fracture into multiple ghost images. Railgun fire 2. The second shot ripped through a carrier, detonating its fighter bays. Swarms of interceptors were incinerated before they could launch. The alien fleet faltered. In the council chamber, alarms blared. Real-time feeds showed the Eternal Resolve bleeding fire, carriers collapsing, cruisers scattering. The laughter was gone. Strategist Vaynar rose, his voice cold. You underestimated them. You called them weak. And now they have shown you what weakness truly is, your arrogance. The chamber erupted in chaos, admirals shouting, strategists scrambling. The Empire certainly fractured in an instant. On the station, Rays stood tall, her voice steady. Railgun fire 3. The final shot struck the Eternal Resolve amidships. The dreadnought convulsed, its spine snapping under the impact. Flames erupted across its hull, consuming decks in cascading detonations. Silence followed. The alien fleet, once a wall of inevitability, now drifted in disarray. Rays exhaled, her eyes hard. They thought we were weak, now they know better. The crew did not cheer, they did not celebrate. They simply returned to their stations, calm, efficient, ready for the next wave, because they knew the Empire would not stop here. And in the void, among the wreckage of arrogance, humanity's defiance burned brighter than any star. Chapter 9, The Aftermath of Arrogance. The railgun's recoil shuddered through the station's spine, a low thrum that resonated in every bulkhead and conduit. Rays felt it in her boots, a reminder that the weapon was not merely a tube of accelerated slugs, but a conduit of will. She lowered her gaze from the smoking hulk of the Eternal Resolve to the tactical display looping over the command hub. The alien fleet, once a tight phalanx of dreadnoughts, cruisers, and swarms of fighters, now resembled a wounded beast, its limbs twitching, its breath ragged. Status on the railgun, Rays said, voice flat, eyes flicking to the readouts. Lieutenant Cade, manning the power conduit, answered without looking up. Capacitors at 73%, cooling loops nominal. We can fire 2 more volleys before we need a full recycle. Ammunition feed is green. Rays nodded. Keep the capacitors topped. We'll need them if they try a second wave. Across the void, the alien command ship, a hulking Arbiter-class vessel draped in iridescent plating, drifted slower than before, its forward thrusters sputtering. Inside its bridge, the high strategist of the Xylar Council, Vaynar, stared at the flickering feeds of his own armada's devastation. The chamber's amber lights had dimmed to a somber hue. The usual chorus of confident chatter had been replaced by a low, urgent murmur. Report, Vaynar commanded, his voice stripped of the theatrical flourish that once marked his addresses. A junior strategist, her mandibles clicking nervously, stepped forward. The Resolve's spinal integrity compromised at frame 19. Secondary power grids offline. Damage control teams report breach in 3 forward compartments. Atmospheric loss estimated at 62%. Fighter bays are inert, launch vectors corrupted by the electromagnetic pulse. Vaynar's eyes narrowed. The pulse, was it ours? No, my lord. Analysis indicates a focused kinetic impact followed by a secondary discharge consistent with our own railgun technology, but scaled beyond our current projections. The humans have somehow replicated and exceeded our railgun specifications. A murmur rippled through the council. Vaynar lifted a hand, silencing them. They did not acquire this through theft, they adapted. Their engineers observed our firing cycles, reverse-engineered the coil geometry, and produced a weapon capable of penetrating our layered hulls at a range we considered safe. He turned to the holographic map projecting the battlefield. Red icons, human stations, mining outposts, and the lone defensive bastion they called the Anvil glowed stubbornly amid a sea of blue alien signatures. The Anvil, though scarred, still pulsed with power. "How many salvos can they sustain?" Vaynar asked. The strategist swallowed. "Based on capacitor discharge rates observed, they can maintain approximately 3 full power shots before requiring a 10-minute cooldown. Their logistics appear robust. They are drawing power from the station's geothermal taps and supplementing with stored antimatter cells." Vaynar's mandibles clicked in a rhythm that approximated thought. "Then we must deny them the time to recycle. We will engage with a dispersed formation, forcing them to split fire. Our frigates will launch salvos of plasma lances at oblique angles, overwhelming their tracking algorithms. Simultaneously, we will deploy a swarm of disruptor drones to jam their targeting grids, replicate the effect that scrambled our own sensors earlier." A murmur of assent rose. Vaynar's gaze fell upon the human commander's visage, frozen in the feed, raised, jaw set, eyes scanning the horizon with a calm that unsettled him. "Send the order," he said. "All vessels adopt formation Gamma. Engage at maximum effective range. Let them taste the cost of underestimating the Xyler." Back on the Anvil, the command hub buzzed with a different kind of energy. Rays watched the alien fleet reconfigure, their ships spreading into a loose crescent, each vessel's thrusters whispering as they adjusted vectors. The alien disruptor drones, small, angular craft emitting a sickly green haze, began to blossom like poisonous flowers around the periphery of the human formation. "Drone swarm detected," blared the automated warning. "ECM interference rising. Target acquisition degraded by 18%. Rays didn't flinch. She tapped a sequence into her console, diverting a fraction of the station's auxiliary power to the point defense lasers. "Point defense, engage swarm, prioritize high-velocity interceptors. Railgun, hold fire until we have a clear shot on the Arbiter." The lasers sang, thin beams of coherent light slicing through the green haze. Each drone that intersected a beam erupted in a flash of ionized plasma, scattering shards of molten alloy. The swarm thinned, but not before several drones slipped through, their disruptor fields washing over the station's outer hull. Alarms chirped as localized shielding flickered. "Shield integrity at 84% on Sector 7, reported the damage control officer, her voice steady despite the flashing reds. "Rerouting power from non-essential grids." Rays nodded. "Divert auxiliary cooling to the railgun barrels. We need them ready for the next volley." A soft chime indicated the Arbiter-class ship had begun its advance, its massive prow aligning with the Anvil's central axis. The alien vessel's main cannon, a gravitic pulse projector, charged, a dark vortex gathering at its muzzle. "Incoming gravitic pulse, estimated impact in 12 seconds, warned the tactical AI. Rays inhaled, then exhaled. "All hands, brace for impact. Redirect forward deflectors to maximum. Prepare counter pulse." The station's forward shields flared, a shimmering wall of distorted space that met the incoming vortex. For a heartbeat, the two forces locked, gravity against electromagnetism, before the shield buckled, sending a ripple of distortion across the hull. Metal groaned, internal dampeners screamed, and a section of the corridor nearest the impact point depressurized with a sudden hiss. Emergency seals snapped shut, trapping a handful of crew in a temporary pocket of air. Alarms wailed, but the damage control teams moved with practiced efficiency, deploying portable patch kits and manual valve by the moment the breach stabilized. "Seal status, primary bulkhead holding at 92%, called out a technician over the comms. "Secondary bulkhead compromised, but isolate achieved." Rays glanced at the readout. The Arbiter's cannon had discharged, but the blast had been deflected enough that the station's superstructure remained intact. The alien ship lurched forward, its momentum carrying it past the Anvil's flank, exposing its weaker aft section. "Now," Rays whispered. She keyed the final command. The railgun's capacitors, having recharged during the brief lull, surged to full capacity. Two slugs, each the mass of a small car, screamed down the barrel, leaving ionized trails that painted the void with incandescent streaks. The first slug struck the Arbiter's aft engine array, a cluster of fusion torches that powered its relentless drive. The impact detonated the containment field, spilling superheated plasma into the surrounding vacuum. The second slug found the ship's command spine, a reinforced truss housing the alien's neural lattice. The kinetic punch sheared through the alloy, sending shockwaves that rattled the vessel's interior like a bell. Arbiter-class ship shuddered, its lights flickering as internal systems cascaded into failure. Escape pods launched in a frantic spray, their occupants fleeing the dying Leviathan. The alien fleet, seeing their flagship falter, began to retreat, their formation dissolving into scattered groups attempting to regroup beyond the anvil's effective range. Silence settled over the battlefield once more, broken only by the soft whine of cooling systems and the distant pings of debris colliding with the station's hull. Reyes stood, her shoulders relaxed but her gaze unflinching. She turned to her officers. "Damage report," she said. Cade stepped forward, his visor reflecting the flickering hues of distant wreckage. Hull breach in Sector 7 sealed. Structural integrity at 96%. Power reserves at 58% after the volley. Railgun capacitors at 34%. Recharge cycle estimated at 8 minutes. Reyes nodded. "Begin repairs on the forward deflectors. Shift auxiliary power to the railgun cooling loops. We'll need them ready if they send another wave." A murmur of agreement rippled through the command hub. No cheers rose, no triumphant chants. The crew moved with the same quiet efficiency that had seen them through the first salvo, the second, and now this third. Their faces bore the exhaustion of prolonged vigilance, but also a grim resolve that had hardened like the steel of their station. Outside, the void glittered with the shattered remnants of alien arrogance, twisted hulls, drifting escape pods, and the faint, fading glow of the Arbiter's dying core. The anvil, scarred but unbroken, hung like a sentinel amidst the wreckage, a testament to the fact that when humanity was pushed to the edge, it did not break. It adapted, endured, and struck back with a precision that left empires reeling. In the distance, the faint pulse of a human beacon blinked, a signal to the scattered fleets beyond the rim, a call to regroup, to reinforce, to prepare. The war was far from over, but for now, the tide had shifted. The Xyler would think twice before underestimating the resolve of those who called the anvil home. And somewhere in the quiet hum of reactors and the steady click of keyboards, the next calculation was already being made. Chapter 10, The Council Fractures. The chamber of the Xyler High Council was a cathedral of arrogance, vaulted ceilings lined with crystalline veins, walls pulsing faintly with the bioluminescent glow of their living architecture. Delegates from the Empire's core worlds sat in concentric tiers, their voices sharp, their tones dripping with disdain. "They are vermin," hissed Arbiter Kael'thar, mandibles clicking in agitation. "One station, one fleet, and already you speak of them as equals. They are scavengers, nothing more." But the holo projection hovering above the central dais betrayed the truth. The anvil's silhouette, scarred yet intact, loomed over the wreckage of 3 Xyler cruisers. The data streams scrolling beside it were damning, power reserves stabilized, railgun capacitors cycling faster than predicted, human repair crews adapting in real time. Counselor Vathar's voice cut through the chamber. "Scavengers do not dismantle our warships with precision strikes. Scavengers do not calculate capacitor recharge cycles mid-battle. They are engineers, tacticians, and they are learning." The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Some demanded escalation, deploy the dreadnoughts, unleash the planetary siege fleets. Others urged caution, warning that humanity's unpredictability was a weapon in itself. Across the void, aboard the anvil, the atmosphere was starkly different. Reyes stood at the tactical console, eyes fixed on the incoming telemetry. Dock workers patched hull fractures with improvised alloys, engineers rerouted coolant through jury-rigged conduits, and logistics officers calculated how many volleys the railguns could sustain before the coils burned out. "Status on the beacon," Reyes asked. "Signal confirmed, outer rim flotillas are responding. Estimated arrival in 36 hours, replied Lieutenant Arjun, his voice steady despite the fatigue etched into his features. Reyes nodded. "That gives us 36 hours to hold this line. Rotate repair crews every 4 hours. No one burns out. We'll need every hand when the next wave comes." No speeches followed, no bravado, just the quiet shuffle of boots, the muted clatter of tools, the hum of reactors. Humanity's strength was not in grand declarations, it was in the relentless discipline of people who refused to yield. Back in the council chamber, the debate reached a breaking point. Kael'thar slammed a claw against the dais. "Deploy the dreadnoughts, crush them before their beacon draws reinforcements." Vathar countered, voice cold. "And if we fail, if our dreadnoughts fall as our cruisers did, the Empire will fracture, our vassals will see weakness, our rivals will scent blood." Silence followed. The councilors understood the stakes. Humanity was no longer a nuisance, it was a mirror reflecting their own vulnerability. On the anvil, Reyes studied the tactical map. The Xyler fleet signatures were shifting, consolidating. "They're debating," he murmured. "They don't know whether to commit or retreat." Arjun glanced at him. "And us?" Reyes allowed himself the faintest smile. "We prepare for both." Orders rippled outward. Dock crews reinforced the forward deflectors with scavenged plating. Railgun teams calibrated firing solutions for dreadnought-class hulls. Communications officers fine-tuned the beacon's signal, ensuring every human ship within range would hear the call. The void outside remained deceptively calm, littered with wreckage that glimmered like frozen stars. But beneath that calm, two empires, one ancient, one rising, stood on the edge of a decision that would shape the war. In the council chamber, Kael'thar leaned forward, voice low and venomous. They thought themselves strong. "We will remind them what it means to defy the Xylar." Vathar's reply was measured, almost weary. "No, they thought themselves weak, and now they show us what strength truly is." The chamber fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the Xylar High Council hesitated, and aboard the anvil, humanity waited calm, calculating, ready to strike when the decision came. The war was no longer about survival. It was about proving a truth the galaxy had long denied. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the storm. Chapter 11, Episode 5, They Thought We Were Weak. Then we Chapter 11, Episode 5, They Thought We Were Weak. Then we showed them. ASF, the Xylar High Council chamber, was a cathedral of arrogance, vaulted ceilings lined with crystalline conduits, walls pulsing with the faint glow of neural archives. Yet tonight the chamber felt smaller, compressed by the weight of indecision. Kael'thar's claws tapped against the obsidian table, each strike echoing like a countdown. "Their fleet is scattered, their hulls patched with scrap. We should crush them now before they consolidate." His voice carried the certainty of centuries of dominance. Vathar's gaze lingered on the holographic projection of the human flotilla. "Scattered, yes, but not broken. Look closer. Every ship is angled to cover another. Every damaged hull is positioned as bait. They are not waiting for rescue, they are waiting for us to commit." The chamber's silence was punctuated by the hum of the projection. For the first time in living memory, the Xylar counselors saw not prey, but predators disguised in steel. On the anvil, Reyes stood with arms folded, watching the tactical map redraw itself in real time. The Xylar fleet signatures pulsed, shifting formations like predators circling uncertain ground. "Dock crews report forward plating secured," Arjun announced, voice clipped. "We've reinforced with scavenged alloy from wreckage. Not pretty, but it'll hold." Reyes nodded. "Railgun teams, calibrated. They've mapped firing solutions for Dreadnought-class hulls. If the Xylar commit, we'll punch holes where it hurts." The communications officer turned, sweat beating at his temple. "Beacon signal is stable. Every ship within range will hear the call. If they move, we'll have allies converging." Reyes allowed himself a thin smile. "Good, let them think we're waiting. In truth, we're already moving." Far beyond the anvil, in orbital drydocks hidden within asteroid belts, human engineers worked with terrifying calm. Welding arcs lit the void as scavenged plating was fused to hulls. Dock workers moved like surgeons, improvising repairs with stripped alien components. One engineer, grease streaked across her face, muttered to her team, "They think we're desperate, let them. Every patch we make is a trap waiting to spring." Another crew chief barked orders, "Shift the reactor shielding. If they target the core, they'll hit reinforced plating. We'll bleed them before they realize." Humanity's strength was not in pristine fleets or ancient empires. It was in adaptation, in turning weakness into weapons. Back in the Xylar chamber, the debate sharpened. Kael'thar's voice rose, venomous. "We are the Xylar Dominion. Hesitation is weakness. If we retreat now, the galaxy will see us falter." Vathar's reply was measured, but carried an edge that silenced the chamber. "And if we commit blindly, the galaxy will see us blade. These humans are not fighting for survival. They are fighting to prove a truth we denied them. That truth will echo louder than any victory." The counselors shifted uneasily. For centuries, the Xylar had crushed rebellions with overwhelming force, but this was different. The humans did not plead for mercy. They did not scatter, they waited calm, calculating, daring the Dominion to strike. On the anvil's command deck, tension coiled like a drawn bowstring. Arjun leaned closer to Reyes. "The retreat, we gain time. If they commit, we bleed them. Either way, we win something." Reyes studied the map, eyes narrowing. "They're not used to hesitation. That's our weapon. Every second they debate, we grow stronger." The void outside was littered with wreckage, frozen fragments of ships that had already paid the price of arrogance. Yet amidst the debris, human vessels held formation, patched and scarred but unyielding. Reyes spoke softly, almost to himself. "They thought we were weak. Now they hesitate. That hesitation is the crack." And through cracks, storms enter. In the hidden relay stations, human communications officers fine-tuned signals, weaving encrypted threads across the void. Messages pulsed outward, hold position, await the call, the storm is coming. Across distant sectors, captains of battered frigates and stealth corvettes received the signal. Engines hummed to life, hulls scarred by previous battles glowed faintly as systems reactivated. Humanity's scattered fleet was not retreating, it was converging. The Xylar Council chamber erupted in argument. Kael'thar slammed his claws against the table. "Commit the dreadnoughts, end this farce before it spreads." Vathar's voice cut through the noise. "End it or ignite it. If we strike and fail, the galaxy will see the Dominion blade, and if the galaxy sees us bleed, they will rise." The chamber fell silent once more. The projection of the human fleet flickered, scarred hulls gleaming like defiance incarnate. For the first time in centuries, the Xylar Dominion faced a choice that carried risk, and risk was something they had long forgotten. On the anvil, Ray's turned to his crew. Prepare firing solutions for both outcomes. If they retreat, we advance. If they commit, we break them. Arjun's jaw tightened, and if they hesitate, Ray's faint smile returned, then we win without firing a shot. Because hesitation is the first step to fear, and fear is the first step to collapse. The crew nodded, calm and resolute. Humanity had learned to weaponize patience. The void remained deceptively calm, wreckage drifting like frozen stars. But beneath that calm, two empires, one ancient, one rising, stood on the edge of a decision that would shape the war. The Xylar Dominion, masters of centuries, hesitated. Humanity, scarred but unbroken, waited. The war was no longer about survival. It was about proving a truth the galaxy had long denied. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the storm, and storms do not wait, they arrive. The Xylar war chamber hummed with the low thrum of overworked command consoles, the projection of the human fleet casting a cold blue glow over the polished obsidian table. Kael'thar's claws had left fresh indentations in the table's surface, his mandibles clicking sharp with impatience. I will not be humiliated by a species that still uses chemical propulsion for their small craft, he snarled, turning to Logistics Chief Vera, her scaled hide etched with the silver stripes of a veteran of 3 border skirmishes. Commit the 3-core dreadnoughts, target the anvil's bridge first, then their carrier wing. We end this in 10 minutes. Vera's fingers flew across her console, pulling up a red-flagged supply chain projection that bloomed over the existing fleet display. The 3-core dreadnoughts are currently suppressing the Skrellian rebellion in the Outer Rim, my lord. The rebellion we incited 3 cycles back, when we seized their mineral-rich moon system to feed our foundries. If we pull them now, Skrellian forces will breach the coreward frontier within 72 hours, seize the 3 grain systems that feed 60% of our outer colonies, and cut our supply lines to the eastern reach entirely. The Dominion loses 40% of its food reserves in 6 months, regardless of the outcome of this fight. Kael'thar's snarl cut off. Vathar leaned forward, his voice low and sharp as he pulled up a secondary stream of sensor data. That's not the only problem. Look at the human fleet's hull signatures. They've been scavenging the wreckage of our destroyed picket ships for the last 6 hours. They've jury-rigged extra point defense turrets to their frigates, scavenged our plasma injectors to boost their destroyer drives by 18%, and hooked the comms arrays from our captured corvettes to their own fleet network. They don't just have firing solutions on every one of our ships, they have firing solutions on the 3 dreadnoughts we thought were hidden behind the moon cluster. 12,000 clicks out, they knew we'd deploy them. On the Anvil's bridge, Ray's watched the Xylar fleet's formation flicker on his main display, 2 flank battlecruisers drifting half a click out of alignment, their weapon systems cycling half-heartedly. Arjun leaned over the tactical station, his jaw tight. Intel from the asteroid belt confirms the civilian colony fleet has moved into firing range of the Xylar command ship. They've jury-rigged the spare plasma cannons we shipped them last month, and the lead captain says she'll ram her command vessel into the Xylar flagship if they open fire on the anvil. The comms officer looked up, her brow furrowed. Sir, incoming tight beam transmission from the Xylar command ship. No audio, just a single data packet. Ray's nodded and the packet popped up on his display. A full fleet manifest, including the deployment status of the 3-core dreadnoughts, their current distance from the coreward frontier, and the projected Skrellian breakthrough timeline. A quiet confirmation they'd been caught. Tell the Xylar we have firing solutions locked on their command ship, their 3 dreadnoughts, and their supply convoy en route to the Outer Rim. We'll hold fire if they recall all assets to the coreward frontier immediately. No shots fired, no terms, just go. Back in the Xylar chamber, Kael'thar stared at the data packet, his claws trembling for the first time in his 120-cycle career. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them tactically, they'd outthought them strategically, tying the entire battle to the Dominion's existing vulnerabilities. If we fight, Vathar said, his voice quiet, we might win this battle. But the Skrellians take the grain systems, the outer colonies starve, and the galaxy sees us bleed over a fight we started over a trivial claim on human border space. If we retreat, we shore up our borders, we keep our food supply, and no one has to know we flinched. Kael'thar stared at the projection of the human fleet, the scarred hulls of their ships gleaming like unbroken defiance, the Xylar prisoner escape pods they'd launched floating in the no-man's land between the 2 fleets, every one of them a reminder that the humans had planned for every possible outcome, including this one. He slammed his claws on the table one last time, not in rage, but in resignation. Recall all fleet assets, stand down weapons, send a tight beam confirmation to the human flagship, no aggression, no follow-up, we leave. On the Anvil's bridge, the comms officer looked up, surprised. They're standing down, sir. All ships are powering down weapons, turning for the coreward frontier, no additional transmission. Ray's leaned back in his chair, the faint, calm smile he'd worn since the first Xylar picket ship appeared on sensors still on his face. Stand down firing solutions. Tell the civilian fleet they can return to the colony, and send a tight beam to the Xylar command ship. If they need humanitarian aid for the Coreward frontier, we'll provide it. Strings attached, Arjun frowned. Sir, we're offering them aid after they tried to glass our colonies. This war was never about killing them, Reyes said, looking out at the void where the Xylar fleet was shrinking into the distance, the wreckage of the battle slowly drifting apart like broken, frozen stars. It was about making them see us as equals, not prey. If we rub their noses in a victory now, they'll just come back in 10 years with a bigger fleet, angrier and more determined to wipe us out. If we offer a hand, they'll think twice before trying to push us around again. We don't need to rule the galaxy. We just need them to leave us alone. The camera pulled back, showing the anvil floating at the head of the human fleet, the Xylar retreating armada a faint glimmer on the edge of the sensor range. Somewhere in the Xylar chamber, Kelthar stared at the empty space where the human fleet projection had been, the weight of the day's loss settling on his shoulders for the first time in centuries. Somewhere on the anvil, Reyes poured himself a cup of coffee, the bitter taste a small, normal comfort after months of waiting for the other shoe to drop. The galaxy would talk about this day for cycles. Not as a great human victory, not as a crushing Xylar defeat, but as the day the Empire stopped seeing humanity as prey and started seeing them as a force to be reckoned with. They thought we were weak, then we showed them, and now they'd never forget. Word count, 987.